We have officially completed 4 weeks of football, and Bobby Bottles is back with his power rankings. And Bobby, I got to say, I'm excited about these ones because I think we're going to see a big shift in the rankings. At least I think we should have. But you are the man, so let's see what you've got.
This is getting less and less clear. The season should be providing more clarity. I believe it's providing more questions in my power rankings. I love the analogy. I don't know if you, I believe I brought it up once. It was a great analogy about fast food places where, when you ask about fast food places, there's like a few that you think of, and then the rest are kind of like we don't know. That I feel like the power rankings this week. I think there are 4 teams that are resoundingly better than everybody else, and then the rest is just like a logjam. So, on that note, let's go to the list. I have number 10. I have the Miami Dolphins. I finally put them in there on accord of Frank and other various people yelling at me that they should be in there. Number 9, I have Minnesota. Uh, Number 8, the Green Bay Packers. Number 7, the San Francisco 49ers. Number 6, the LA Chargers. Number 5, the LA Rams. And here is where the cutoff is, because here are the 4 best teams in football, and it is not even an arguable. Number 4, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 3, the Philadelphia Eagles. Number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs. And number 1, the Buffalo Bills. And I don't even know if the Bills, I don't know if I have that backwards, because I don't know. I could make an easy case that KC's the best team in football, but I think those 4 are resoundingly better, although they all 4 have giant question marks. I think those are the 4 best teams in football.
Okay, let's dig into this. I don't have a problem with the top 4. I think you can make an argument, like you said, about Kansas City. I think you can make an argument that the Eagles might be the best team. I think their defense is so solid that it puts them up there. I'm a little shocked that Baltimore is not in your top 10. They've looked really good, especially with Lamar having, I'm not saying an MVP season, but if we were to give out the award right now, he'd be in the conversation. He's been that good. And I'm definitely surprised that you listened to the people about your Miami pick, because you don't seem to be that type of guy to buckle under the pressure, as we would hear in Ace Ventura, to put them in. But here we are. They made the top 10.
What do you know about pressure?
Exactly.
I thought that was an impressive loss on Thursday, and bettors will understand what I'm talking about. Miami had no business being in that game against Cincinnati with the hurricane off of a tough game against the best team in the league, 90 plays in humidity on a short week on the road. I can't believe that was a close game. Like, Cincinnati should be embarrassed. That is a game where Cincinnati should run away with it. So the fact that Miami was there is a real testament. Now, I will say this for everybody that was saying it was ridiculous that I didn't have Miami in the top 10 last week. What is more ridiculous? Not having Miami in, or having Miami at number 1 as the best team in the league? I think this is a resounding, if I had to pick between Miami is the best team in the league or not in, this is not even a debate.
Who put them at number 1?
Hey, you name it. ESPN, CBS, Frank, Al. I mean,
no.
Every
pundit. Not this Frank. Not this Frank.
I do find it ironic that last week, after they beat the best team in football, the Bills, you don't put them on the list. And then this week they go and lose to the Bengals, who are not in your top 10, and all of a sudden they are on your list. Make it make sense for me, buddy.
It's
but like
simple.
Frank says, that's why you're the best.
It's pretty
and
simple. that 10, 9, 8 are going to be revolving doors this year, because I have 2 teams right outside that I can make a case of. Baltimore and Jacksonville easily could be in there. So I put Miami in there, saying maybe they should have been the 8th, 9th, 10th team last week in the power rankings. I'll put them in knowing that probably in 2 to 3 weeks, there's going to be a Baltimore, there's going to be a Jacksonville. Hell, maybe there might even be a Detroit in there if they can figure out their defensive problems.
Can we talk about the Super Bowl champs for a second? Because I would completely take them out of the top 10. I think they've looked terrible all 4 games. They're 2-2, but they have not looked good at all. Against the really good teams that they played, they've been absolutely handled. The offensive line is terrible. They have no run game. Stafford is not doing a good job of spreading the ball out. You're throwing, okay, Cooper Kupp is fantastic. But when you're throwing to him 19 times, other teams just know that that's happening, and they're all short balls because he doesn't have time to stretch the field. I am not impressed with them one bit. I would completely take them out and put either one of those two teams that I would put Baltimore in over them. I'd put Jacksonville in over them, which, by the way, I believe Frankie asked you the first week, could you see Jacksonville being in this? And you said absolutely not, or you laughed in his face. One or the other.
A little bit of A, a little bit of B.
Doug Peterson.
What the hell is wrong with the Rams, though, for real?
I think, like you said, Joe, before you go, Frank, it's O-line issues. I mean, they lost. I can't remember the left tackle. They came
Andrew
from
Whitworth.
Cincinnati. Whitworth goes out. The center, they got a center issue. I still,
Whitworth retired. Sorry, he was the older guy.
Yes, Whitworth retired, and the centerman got their center got injured. So, the only reason I have them up here is because, in terms of who I would trust most after those four teams, it'd have to be the Rams. They're coming off. They've proven that they can win a Super Bowl. They're well coached. But
it's not about what they did like 6 months ago or 8 months ago. It's about what they're doing now, and they look terrible right now. To have them on the list, let alone at 5, I think is ludicrous. Frankie agrees with me. Thank you, Frankie. Get in there, please.
Yeah.
He's down. Jump on him while he's down.
Listen, I think the Rams caught lightning in a bottle last year. And I think, obviously, if you're figuring it out this year, you take Cooper Kupp out of the equation, even though they get 19 targets, right? You stop him. What else? Like, Allen Robinson, they signed to a big deal. He's the invisible man. I think that's his Halloween costume. And Joe would know that better than anybody. He's on his fantasy team.
Might drop him tonight. I'm not gonna lie. They don't even look his way.
Virtually no running game at all. Like zero. I don't know. We don't know what happened to Jalen Ramsey. We don't know if that's Jalen Ramsey or Mike Ramsey, NHL defenseman. So I'm a little shocked. That I wouldn't even actually be opposed to them being out.
I agree.
Of the top 10. And I'll tell you another reason why. That NFC West division, you can have an argument. Well, they're all 2-2. So why isn't Arizona could be in the top 10? Why? Well, obviously San Fran's in there. Obviously, okay, the Rams. Like, why not Zona? They're 2-2. Why are they any worse than the Rams? Last thing for me, I'm actually a little surprised. I'm a lot surprised how Baltimore doesn't crack that top 10, especially when you got a legitimate MVP candidate in Lamar Jackson carrying that team. And they may even win the division. I still have them winning the division, but right now they're not in the top 10. So that was probably the biggest shock for me.
So do I. I have them winning the division, but I think at some point they become the 10th team, 9th team. Again, like, if you were to hold a gun to my head and say, are the LA Chargers that much better than Baltimore Ravens? I don't know if I'd be able to say yes. I think there's just such a mishmash from 5 to like 13, 14, where there's just a lot of teams that you could be like, yeah. I mean, Jacksonville's going to win the AFC South. It's going to happen. Sorry, Frank. They're going to win the AFC South.
Oh, I've already come to that reality.
And yet I don't think there's a big gap between them and number 5. I think there's just such a big drop off, despite the fact that the teams number 1 to 4 all have legitimate issues. There's still a massive drop after 5, and this ranking could look completely different in 3 weeks. And I try to kind of forecast. I'm not a guy that I hate when I read standing or I read power rankings and it's just the standings. I've tried to do this to say, hey, these are legitimately the best teams. This list could change from 5 to 10 very easily next week or within 2 weeks. But 1 to 4, it's, for me, not going to change at all for probably a long time.
So you say that teams basically 5 to 14 are like interchangeable at this point.
I think so.
Are one of those teams the Dallas Cowboys, who we all left for dead after week 1 when they looked terrible against the Bucs, and then they lose Dak Prescott due to a broken finger for 4 to 6 weeks. Everyone said at that point, that's it. Season is over. And they've just railed off 3 wins in a row with Cooper Rush as their QB. And Dak's around the corner. Supposed to be back. The defense looks solid. What do you think of the Cowboys?
Great. They have a generational talent in Micah Parsons, and they've got some really good pieces on their defense. I mean, quarterback play. The fact that their starting quarterback can go out and Cooper Rush can step in and they don't miss a beat just shows you how pedestrian Dak Prescott is and how average kind of this team is. If you imagine if the Buffalo Bills or Kansas City Chiefs lost their quarterback, what would happen to that team? It'd be a disaster. And yet the Dallas Cowboys are treading water. If you had to put a gun to my head, I don't know, maybe 17, 18, like they have a chance of making the playoffs, but do any of us really think that the Dallas Cowboys are a legitimate threat to win the Super Bowl or even get into this top 10?
No chance. No, not winning the Super Bowl. They're the Cowboys, man. They would blow it anyways in the playoffs.
But is Cooper Rush not one of the best? Like, if you had to close your eyes and think of a quarterback name, does that not just sound like a quarterback? Or better yet, like a backup quarterback? That's such a great name.
Like in the show Friday Night Lights, like they should have named the character, the quarterback, Cooper Rush.
Cooper Rush.
Absolutely.
Like
remember in Varsity Blues when you drove by Jonathan Moxon's house and they had the sign QB for the Westgate, like they would be Cooper Rush.
Cooper Rush.
Right there. It's true. That's a good point, Frankie.
That was not Varsity Blues. That was Friday Night Lights, but yeah.
No, that was Varsity Blues, my friend.
Are you sure?
Or is it sign in front? Well? Yep.
A 10.
That's a great movie.
Hey, Friday Night Lights too. Permian Panthers with the
great movie as well. Yes, great fun.
You know what? In terms of again going back to Dallas, I think there's so many teams. I would say Cincinnati's a better team than Dallas. I would say Detroit's a better team than Dallas. Again, Detroit.
Would you say the Broncos are better than Dallas?
Yes. Yeah, I would. If you put neutral field, I would. Well, now that they lost, they just lost Randy Gregory to IR, so they're in a little bit of trouble with no running back, and now they're getting a little decimated. But I just think they're just like an average team for me.
I think the Broncos are horribly average. They look terrible right now. They should have been way better.
I agree. I have a question. What happened to Jared Goff that all of a sudden you sit there and say, that is a real offense in Detroit?
You want to know the answer? You want to know the answer? Two things. Amon-Ra St. Brown and the fact that he was picked up off waivers by Coach Frank's fantasy football team as the starting quarterback.
It gave him the confidence to be good again. That's what it was.
That is the answer.
Okay. And
it's funny because me and Frank were just talking about this before we came on, actually, about how he has Goff now, and he's going to be like a top 12 quarterback in fantasy for the rest of the season because Detroit's got a great offensive line. He has great weapons around him, and they're always trailing. So this guy's going to be passing all the time. He's going to get tons of yardage. So yeah, he's going to have a good year.
The Amon-Ra St. Brown, crazy name, by the way. One of the wackiest names we've heard in a while, but like that's a great reason, Frank. But they put up 45 on Sunday without him. I took Seattle
and lost.
And lost. Yeah, I took Seattle because I'm like, no Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm like, they're in trouble. Nope. This league just continues to push.
I saw a guy who won the DraftKings daily fantasy $2 million jackpot. He posted his lineup. It was Jared Goff. It was Jamal Williams, Josh Reynolds, TJ Hawkinson. Basically the whole Detroit offense. Mixed with a couple other guys. I think he had Eckler in there as well, who put up a good. Yeah, so it was the whole Detroit offense.
Let's not talk about fantasy football, okay?
Do you know who should have got $2 million? Anybody that sat through the New York Giants Chicago Bears game. You should have been paid money. To anybody who sat through that I watched 2 seconds and I was like, no, I can't watch this.
I didn't even watch the Jets Steelers game there, Bobby. Remember when you said I couldn't pay you enough to watch that game? I didn't watch it myself. My wife said, let's go to Wonderland with the kids. I'm like, yeah, whatever, sure.
And at least like Pittsburgh, you got a chance to see Kenny Pickett. Maybe you could see the future.
Okay, so I was gonna bring this in. We can segue into this. I just want to talk about them for a second. A team that will never make it close to your top 10, or at least shouldn't. We all knew Mitch Trubisky was a stopgap, but at some point Pickett was gonna have to play, and I'm glad it's now. You have the rest of the season. This is so important. You got to get him minutes. You got to get him snaps and reps. You need to know if this is your QB for the future, because hopefully they're going to get a high enough pick that if he's not the QB of the future, then they're going into a draft class that is, and you could attest to this, Bobby, because you're the college guy, we'll have a very good quarterback class.
Six or seven guys going on the first round.
So they could be like the Arizona Cardinals, where they drafted Josh Rosen and then the very next year punted it and took Kyler Murray.
Mm-hmm.
Then Steelers' next 4 games are against the Bills, Tampa, Miami, and the Eagles. By that time, they will be 1-7. Tell TJ Watt to take a nap for the rest of the season. Do not come back. We talk about it all the time. There is no point in being 8-8 or 8-9. Be as bad as you possibly can. Get the young kid the reps. Your two goals: be as bad as you can and figure out if you have your QB. If he ain't the guy, go draft him. If he is the guy, then you've got a top 10 pick to get either an O lineman, a defensive end to put pressure. There's so many different ways you can go, but they got to find out.
What you just said applies to like not just you guys. I mean, I could list a bunch of teams: Chicago, the Jets, the Giants. This is the time to find out if you've got the guy, because from what we're hearing, 6 or 7 QBs are going to go in the first round this year. That's a pretty heavy draft class, and we don't know if you don't know if any of them are any good, but you got to find out now if that's your guy. So yeah, that's it's not just the Steelers. And lastly, the last point I had from the weekend: field goal kickers. Is there any position that has improved more? Because I remember I used to watch games 10 years ago, and I used to sweat over like 40-yard, 45-yarders. And now it's like, unless it's an extra point, because it seems like they're missing those, 50, 55, 60+ field goals are just routine now.
It's true.
That giant.
You know when the turning point was? When that British guy who had smoked on the field in the replacements, when he kicked that long field goal, it's like he changed the game for field goal kickers.
He was an inspiration.
Kicked the bloody piss out of it.
Do you maybe kids watch that and they're like, we want to be a field goal kicker?
I think so. He's a role model. Been absolutely.
That I had Minnesota in. So I short story or long story short here, I had Pittsburgh in Survivor, and at the last second when I heard all of the injuries for New Orleans, I was like, you know what, I'm going to change to Minnesota. And then we had that double doink there, which was what a incredible game to start the weekend.
Before we get out of here, because I want to put this on the gram. I witnessed just a terrible beat in fantasy football this week, and it happened to our very own coach Frank. So going into the Monday nighter, Frank had the highest score in the league, and the other guy he was playing had the second highest score in the league. So already you have a problem right there, because that just completely sucks. Frank is winning by, I think, 4 points. Was it, Frankie?
No. Almost 6.
Almost 6 points. Okay. And what happens? So Frank has Deebo Samuel, who had a fantastic game, and the other guy has the
San Fran defense.
And what happens at the end of the game?
There's only one thing that I could have lost on.
And that's exactly what happened. A pick 6 to the house ties the game, and then they have another 4th down stop, a sack.
No, it was a fumble. They recovered a fumble. That's
right. Yes. So Frankie, I feel sorry for you, but I want to know out there, why don't you tell us what your most horrible beat was in fantasy football? I love hearing these stories.
Do you know what I want to know? And I think football is the perfect sport for this. I am in a league with the median. Do people like, and if people don't know, Joe, do you know explain the median to people?
So basically the theory is, it avoids this instance, what happened to Frank, where you end up with the second highest weekly score in the league, but you still lose that week based off of your head-to-head matchup, which is just fluke. The median score, basically, you're playing 2 games each week. You're playing your head-to-head matchup, and you're playing against the median score of the league that week. So you take the average of everyone's score. If your score is higher than that, you get a win for that. If your score is below that, you get a loss for that. So each week you could be 0-2 if you lose your head-to-head and you're below the median. You could be 1-1. So Frankie, he would have been 1-1. At least it would have salvaged him a little bit, right? Could have slept last night a couple hours.
Well, a little bit.
Or you could be 2-0, which is great. So I think it's a great idea. I don't know if Yahoo has that capability. I know Sleeper does, but
I know I was in a matchup last week where it was like, I think I won 86-61, an absolute, like, I was embarrassed to take a win in that, but it eliminates me from just getting a 1-0 week. I went 1-1 because I was way below the median. And hey, I think it's a really good idea. Before we get out of here, I just want one more point to the power rankings. I forgot to bring this up. Congratulations to Buffalo, because in an absolutely unreal stat that I couldn't believe when I heard this, this was their first single score win since 2020. They have not won a close game in almost 2 years. It's a remarkable stat for a team that wins as much as Buffalo does, but this was the first time they won within 7 points in almost 2 years. So absolutely
Congrats.
Crazy stat.
Bills
for
Mafia. Tables, baby. All right, everybody.
TLC.
Thank you for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, that like button, and throw us some comments. Tell Bobby how horrible his rankings are. We love that sort of stuff.
I hate it.
Yeah, definitely.
You know when you have like a bad draft and like halfway through you're like, I'm having a shit draft here.
That's what you were like today,
yeah. I'm hitting the waiver wire the second this thing shuts down.
Got it. Yep.
That's how I feel.